Thank you all for being here. And whether you've been part of the kids ministry for a while or are new, I'm really thankful that you have decided to, to join us and to serve our church in this way. And I just wanted to encourage you guys just briefly and say what you are doing and serving in this role is really important. I often think about like the classic like passage of scripture talking about Jesus and just his attitude towards children. And we see he loved children, and when children came to him and others said, "Go away," Jesus said, "No, let them come to me." And so I like to speculate that if Jesus was at our ministry team sign up, he probably would check off kids ministry, if not other ones too, but he would probably be there because it seemed like he really liked to be around kids. And so but also when I think about that passage, I notice that some of the other grown-ups were trying to send the children away so Jesus can do the important ministry. And I think that's important for us to remember serving in this role, that what we are doing is not just keeping the kids away from the grown-ups in their service, right? It's not childcare. What we're doing is really important. We're discipling children. We are, in a way, it's kind of like pre-evangelism, right? Because they don't have their own personal walks with Jesus yet. And when I, think about my own personal story, my memories of church and being in kids class, growing up, it's what laid the foundation for me to learn to love God's people, but to ultimately love him. And so of course we want to focus on helping them learn more about God and grow in their knowledge and understanding of God and the Bible. But also a big part of what we're doing is creating a place where they have those good memories, core memories, if you will, of church and the people that follow Jesus, loving them and caring about them. Um, part of that is what we're here to do today, and what Jen's going to lead us through. And part of that is creating a safe environment where we do our best and do our part to make sure that they are cared for well, and that not only is it a knowledge-filled place, a fun place, but it's also a safe place. And so I just wanted to say thank you for being here, and thanks for serving this way. And Jen, you can take it away.
Okay, thanks for coming today. So what we're going to do is I just want to give reminders out. I already started before this meeting, but I will continue afterwards. I'm updating all the files for the end of 2024, and we just some people's police checks have expired, or if you're new, I need a police check from you. So if you get an email from me, please update your police check for me. And if you don't get an email from me, but you're new, then please just feel free to email me and ask me for the letter that you'll need to get the police check. But I think I've got everyone. So some of you guys are totally good to go for a while after we do this quick update. And then thank you for serving on kids. What we're going to do is most of you have done the complete training, and you're not required to do the complete training again. So what we're going to do is a 15-minute refresher course, I guess, and that is required by our insurance to do every year. And so we'll just do this quick 15 minutes at the beginning, and then I will let you know when that is over, and you guys are free to go at that point. And then anyone new or who has not done the complete training yet, just stay on and we'll go through the whole manual. So did everyone get the manual from Dustin this afternoon? We're good? Okay, so what we're going to do is skip ahead to the how we prevent abuse. This is the important part for everyone for the refresher. And so for those of you who have not completed the whole training. It's going to be just slightly out of order, but I think you'll be able to follow along, no problem. So we just want to go through how we prevent abuse at Hope Hills and what our policies and procedures are for our vulnerable sectors, okay? So policies and procedures, these are for all children's and teens ministries that we're going to go over. So a 2 adult policy, that means 2 vetted adults must be present with the children at all times. And so vetted adults are those who have attended training, we have their police check, etc. Okay, so we want 2 vetted adults to be present with the children at all times. And if there are circumstances, we know sometimes with kids, things happen. And so if there are circumstances where one adult must remain in the room, the door of the room should be left open. And so if you have to run after a child who's running away or something like that, that happens once in a while. And so we know that we just need to leave the doors open and make sure that everything is visible. With our setup right now, the way it is, because we're not in small contained rooms, that's very easy to do. So no other adults other than Hope Hills kids, volunteers, or parents are permitted in the kids area when it's going on. So don't let anyone who's just coming in come to stay with them. Sometimes we have parents dropping off, and that's okay, but we don't want them to just anyone to be present within that kids space. Okay. Washroom and diapering. So it is strongly, strongly encouraged that parents change diapers and take their child to the washroom. Okay. So barring an emergency, if a child says they have to go to the washroom, you go find the parent, tell them their child has to go to the washroom, and let them deal with it. Okay. So we can display their child's security number on the screen. We don't have that technology going at the moment, but it's in there in case we do, and then or by a volunteer finding them. So if the parent is unavailable for some reason, then the diapering must take place by the parent or approved Hope Hills Kids volunteer. So if it's a Hope Hills Kids volunteer, it must be done in clear view of a second volunteer. And if this child needs to be taken to the washroom, the approved Hope Hills Kids volunteer must check to make sure there are no other adults in the washroom. And then when it's clear, the child may use the washroom while the adult waits outside. If a child is very young and needs assistance and the parent is not available, then we need 2 adults. So this presents a problem when there's only 2 adults in the room, and then you can't leave all the kids by themselves. So what you can do is you can always find those who you know are approved adults that you've worked with before. So you can go find me or somebody who's you've worked with in kids class before, someone who you know has gone through this whole process, and pull us out of church. I would always be happy to help in that situation if you need anything. So at no time is a volunteer to be alone with a child in the washroom. So it's very important. This is one of those cases where we don't have any compromise on that. Okay. Use of physical redirect. When a child is a danger to themselves or others, it may be necessary to physically redirect them. So here are some appropriate redirects. Leading a child by the hand away from a situation, the use of timeouts, temporarily blocking a child from another child, or temporarily holding a child away from another during a fight. If a child is getting out of control, we want to call the parents immediately to prevent the escalation of the situation so that the use of physical redirects are not necessary, but we would be able to use those particular ones if absolutely necessary. Discipline of a child is never appropriate. So we never discipline or do anything outside of just that initial redirect to get control of the situation. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, I can't see everyone on my screen, so if you have any questions, please just do the hand raising feature or send up an emoji or something and I will call on you. If you just physically do it in your screen, I can't see everybody. Okay, so just like Dustin put thumbs up. I'm assuming thumbs up means we're good to keep going. So 0 to 3 ministry. We have appropriate touch for children 0 to 3. Obviously, children 0 to 3 need a lot of physical assistance. So those touches are appropriate by screened adults. So if we need to hold or rock or holding while sleeping, having on your lap to comfort, hugging to comfort, sitting beside, putting an arm around a shoulder, or holding hands while praying, or leading a walking toddler. Okay, so these are mostly for very young children, mostly babies, holding, rocking, things like that. That's if you're in nursery and we are trying to put a baby to sleep, or holding an infant, things like that. Okay, so we can do that with children 0 to 3. That's most of this is going to be in nursery. We do have 3-year-olds in the kids class, but you know, we would treat most of the kids in the kids class with the appropriate touches in the 4 to 7 ministry. Okay, so most of these are for infants. 4 to 7 ministry appropriate touch: pats on the shoulder or back, handshakes, high fives, and fist bumps, verbal praise. You can put an arm around a shoulder. If they want to hold hands during prayer, you can do that. If you're walking small children, you can hold their hand. Sitting beside small children, kneeling or bending down for a brief hug if they initiate it, and a pat on the head. Okay, these are appropriate touches to, as particularly when the child initiates them. Okay. Inappropriate touch is inappropriate or lengthy embraces, kissing children, holding children over 3 years of age in your lap, touching a child between the belly button or shin, wrestling with children, tickling children, piggyback rides, hugs from behind, any type of unwanted affection, any type of massage given between an adult and child, compliments or comments that relate to physique or body development, spending time alone with children outside of church, touching a child in anger or disgust, and contacting a child through telephone or electronic means. Okay. I've had questions before about this spending time alone with children outside of church. That means just in your role as a kids volunteer. Okay. If you are friends with somebody and you they ask you to babysit their children or something, that's not a problem. We're not policing all of that. It's just if someone were to say, do kids ministry extend outside of the church, and can you come watch my child or something, we would say no, that is not part of our kids ministry to spend time alone with children outside of our church. Okay. 8 through 12 ministry. Appropriate touch is pats on the shoulder or back, handshakes, high fives, and fist bumps, verbal praise, putting an arm around a shoulder, holding hands during prayer, returning a quick hug. It must be initiated by the child. Inappropriate touch, it's the same as the other one, so I won't read them all again. Okay. This is where contacting a child through telephone or electronic means starts to get more important, because some kids ages 8 through 12 also have cell phones. Okay. So we would suggest, or we would say between ages 8 and 12 that you're not contacting them on their phone at all. All contact would be through parents. Okay, teen ministry, appropriate touch is the same as 8 through 12. Inappropriate touch is also the same, except for now we are adding that if you are contacting a teenager through texting or social media, it must be done in a 3-way conversation with either another screened leader or a parent or guardian of the teenager. Conversations must be saved and not deleted. Okay, so we understand now if you're working with a 16-year-old, sometimes you need to contact them directly. Sometimes they want to have their own updates about what's happening at church or youth group, things like that. So we allow that in teen ministry, but it must be in a three-way conversation. And the reason I put social media in there is because sometimes teenagers will only message you on social media. And so, but I would not suggest just, following all the teenagers on social media or anything like that. But sometimes that's how they like to communicate. Okay, and then vulnerable adult ministry. This is ministry to seniors, the disabled, or those in medical distress. We can hold a hand to comfort or pray together, hugs initiated by the other adult, assisting with mobility if asked by an adult or family member, and you can be alone with an adult in the room if there are windows. Okay, so if you're visiting at the hospital or visiting, at a senior's home or something like that, you can have these actions. Okay, so that is our just our refresher on how we prevent abuse. Do we have any questions on that? Anything that wasn't clear, especially for those who are new? No. Okay. Well then, those of you who have been through the full training before, thank you for updating your 2024. You're good for another year. And you're welcome to hop off the call at any time. And I will start back at the beginning with those who are new. Thanks for coming. Okay. So we are going to start with why we need abuse prevention in the church. And we're going to see how the Bible teaches us to care about the vulnerable. So Jesus cared for children. This is the story that Beth started with, right? With the little child coming to him. And then Jesus says, but whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to fall away, it would be better for him if a heavy millstone were hung around his neck and he was drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of offenses. And so when we think of vulnerable groups of people, we most often think of children. And here Jesus teaches his disciples the importance of children. This was countercultural at the time when men would have been considered superior to women and children, but Jesus not only welcomed children, he charged us with protecting them. And so we want to be very sure that in our church, we are protecting our children, especially. Part of Jesus' mission was to free the oppressed. When he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, as usual, he entered the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. The scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him, and unrolling the scroll, he found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim the release of the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free the oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." He then rolled up the scroll and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fixed on him. He began by saying to them, "Today as you listen, the scripture has been fulfilled." So all throughout scripture, we see the word oppression, and it is used much the same way we would use abuse today. So we want to prevent abuse the same way scripture talks about preventing oppression. So those who are being abused, neglected, and exploited are in need of Jesus. They're in need of salvation, yes, but they're also in need of the family of God to come around them and free them from their oppression or their abuse. And we want this to be a safe place where they feel as though there is no oppression here. Another reason is covering up abuse is not condoned by God. You can read these 7 verses here in Luke 12. But he's saying there's nothing covered that won't be uncovered, nothing hidden that won't be made known. Therefore, what you have said in the dark will be heard in the light, and what you have whispered in an ear in private rooms will be proclaimed on the housetops. And so, throughout the church's broad history, not our church particular, but the church's broad history, there has been much covering up of abuse. And we want to be very sure that our church is not part of that, that our church, we bring things to light. And we part of the way we're doing that is by preventing abuse, but part of the way we're doing that is by putting in good procedures and policies in place for if abuse does happen, that it's not covered up and that it is brought to the light. We are commanded to speak up for the vulnerable. Speak up for those who have no voice, for the justice of all who are dispossessed. Speak up, judge righteously, and defend the cause of the oppressed and needy. So those who are oppressed are vulnerable and often need us to lend our voice to theirs. We don't want to override them or not let them speak, but we want to speak up with them and speak for add our voice to theirs. And so the Bible tells us not just not cover up their story, but to speak up and defend those who are being oppressed. Another reason that we do all this training is because predators are hard to spot. They're often confident, charismatic, seem kind, are quick to volunteer, and win people's hearts easily, making them hard to spot. So because they endear themselves to people, it makes it harder for people to believe when accusations are brought forward. And that's why we don't just have accusation, or we don't just have policies that say, well, if we believe them, we will we'll take it seriously. No, we want policies in place for every accusation, every whiff of abuse. We want to have policies in place to deal with that. Because if we just went by, well, it seems true or it not seems true, that would be very difficult for us, and it's not our job to do because they are hard to spot. Predators also gravitate towards churches. This is a sad reality, but this is one that is very real. Predators come in and they see a lot of vulnerable people, and they see churches that really want people to volunteer. And so all of you guys are new, and we've been saying we need more volunteers, right? And so it's a space that ends up being, it can be more accessible to predators. And so that's why we do this type of thing, so that it is not accessible to predators, and we protect our vulnerable people. And also for legal reasons. So insurance companies require us to have abuse prevention in place. So what is abuse? We're going to look at some definitions so that you are familiar with what is right, what is wrong, what is legal, what is not legal. And most of this you can see is taken from Alberta Police, where I could not get Alberta Police definitions. We used RCMP. And so we are, it's all footnoted there, and you can see where it's in quotes that we took this right from the police websites. So abuse is an attempt to control the behavior of another person. It is a misuse of power, which uses the bonds of intimacy, trust, and dependency to make the victim vulnerable. So you can see how this especially applies to adults working with vulnerable sectors, because there is trust, dependency, especially young children are very dependent upon adults. And so we want to prevent that from happening. So where we get our definitions, I just said that. So definitions of specific abuse. So we're going to look first at neglect. Neglect is when a parent or guardian does not provide their child or youth with basic age-appropriate care, such as food, clothing, shelter, love and affection, protection from harm. So why are we talking about neglect? Because we're not responsible for neglect. We are also mandated reporters, because you are working with children. So because you are a mandated reporter, what that means is you are required to report any signs of abuse that you see. And so when you see a child week after week, then you may come across some of these signs of abuse. And so we'll talk more as we go through it, what that looks like, what reporting looks like, all of that. But first, we're going to just talk about what is the abuse that you might see happening around you. So a neglected child or youth may often be hungry or steal or hoard food, be underweight or dehydrated, have poor hygiene, Wear clothes that are torn, dirty, and do not fit or are not right for the season. Try to take on adult responsibilities like caring for siblings, doing household tasks, or looking after a parent. Say that their parents are rarely home or not want to go home, have medical or dental problems that will not go away, such as infected sores, decayed teeth, or difficulty seeing that is not being addressed. Okay, so that's neglect. You might come across seeing neglect. Sexual assault and harassment in adults. So sexual violence is an act committed against someone's sexual integrity without that person's freely given consent. It can be physical and or non-contact, affects all ages and genders, and the person committing the act may be known or a stranger. It is against the law, both civil and criminal, and includes, but is not limited to, sexual assault, sexual harassment, sexual exploitation. So we'll take a quick look at each one of those. Sexual assault. Any unwanted act of a sexual nature that is imposed on another person without their consent. It can include forced or unwanted kissing, touching, vaginal penetration, anal penetration, oral sex. Sexual harassment involves any unwanted sexual behavior that affects or prevents a person from getting or keeping a job, promotion, or living accommodations, and is a form of discrimination based on the grounds of gender, including transgender, which is prohibited under the Alberta Human Rights Act. It includes unwanted or uninvited sexual remarks, gestures, sounds like leering or whistling, actions that make a person feel unsafe, degraded, or uncomfortable, even if the harasser claims to have only been joking. Sexual exploitation happens when a person in a position of trust or authority uses that power to start or attempt sexual activity with another person. It can be direct or indirect and may include touching, violence, coercion, use of threats. So who is affected by this? According to the Association of Alberta Sexual Assault Services and Statistics Canada, 87% of survivors are women, although sexual violence can impact all genders. 94% of sexual violent offenders are men. 95% of survivors do not report assaults to police, making sexual violence the most underreported crime in Canada. An estimated 1.8 million Albertans have experienced sexual violence in their lifetime. That is 45% of Alberta's population, almost 1 in every 2 people. Women in Alberta are more likely than men to report experiencing unwanted sexual behavior online, including online harassment. Women are more likely to report experiencing unwanted sexual behavior in the workplace than men. In 2018, there were 12,202 senior victims of police-reported violence in Canada. Of these, 511 were sexual assault. The rate of sexual assault was higher for senior women than senior men. According to Statistics Canada, some groups are more likely to experience sexual violence. The LGBTQ2S plus community. In 2014, Canadians who identified as homosexual or bisexual had a rate of sexual assault 6 times higher than those who identified as heterosexual. Indigenous women and girls, they are in Canada are 3 times more likely to be victims of violence than non-Indigenous women. In 2014, the rate of self-reported sexual assault among Indigenous people was approximately 3 times higher than among non-Indigenous people. Children and adolescents. In 2016, the rates of police-reported sexual assault were the highest among youth ages 16 to 17, while sexual violations against children were highest among those aged 12 to 15 in Alberta. And people with disabilities. In 2014, the rate of sexual assault among people with a disability was approximately 2 times higher than those with no disability in Canada. So the legal age of consent in Canada is 16. Someone under 16 may have sexual relations with someone close in age without it being considered assault. So all of that is important for you to know, especially if you are working with our vulnerable sector that is adults, disabled, or senior adults. Okay, so you want to be aware of that happening and have know what to do to report it if we are reporting it or helping them report. Okay, which we will get to. Sexual abuse in children. This is also important for you to know what is considered sexual assault and sexual harassment in Canada. Not only to see it and report it, but also to not be involved in any sexual activity. Okay. Sexual abuse happens when a parent or guardian exposes their child or youth to inappropriate sexual contact, activity, or behavior. This may include non-touching activities such as having inappropriately sexual phone calls or conversations, making the child watch someone expose themselves, showing them pornographic material, sexual touching activities such as fondling, making them touch an adult or other child's genital area, sexual intercourse with the child or youth, sexual exploitation activities such as engaging a child or youth for prostitution, using them in pornography, luring them via the internet for sexual purposes. So some signs: a sexually abused child or youth may know more about sex than others their age, behave in an improper or aggressively sexual way with peers, teachers, or other adults, use sexual language or make drawings with sexual images, start wetting or soiling their pants, wetting the beds, or sucking, be afraid to go to sleep, have nightmares or sleep long hours, become withdrawn, anxious, fearful, or depressed, and have physical trauma or irritations in the anal and genital areas. So sexual exploitation of children. The online child sexual exploitation is one of the most disturbing public safety issues facing society today. It continues to harm past and present generations of children in Canada and abroad. Child sexual exploitation online includes child sexual abuse material, actual but also fictitious, written depictions of child sexual abuse, audio, video, and images, also known as child pornography, self-generated materials and sexting, youth-generated explicit images, videos on the internet, which are often further distributed without consent, sextortion, use of coercion and threats to extort child sexual exploitation, images, videos from youth, grooming and luring, use of applications and platforms to connect with children and youth for the purpose of sexually exploiting them, live child sexual abuse streaming, viewing of child sexual abuse in real time, often involves the offender directing the abuse, and made to order content. So sexual exploitation can occur anywhere and to any young person under the age of 18, regardless of their gender, family situation, or social, cultural, or economic background. It can happen through social media, apps, and chat sites, on the internet, at parties, at the mall, or other public spaces within a family. Some signs: maybe they withdraw from friends and family, be secretive about who they see and where they have been, be unusually protective about a new relationship or friendship and unwilling to talk about it, hang around with older people, wear clothing or jewelry and have a phone or device they could not afford to buy, carry a lot of condoms or sexual aids, or be very secretive and reactive about their browser history, websites they visit, or contacts on their phone. Okay, so that's all the sexual abuse, and also you can see why we've put into place that you don't have personal conversations with teenagers on their phone, things like that. Any questions so far? Okay. Physical abuse. Physical abuse is when a parent or guardian causes an injury or trauma to any part of their child's body. It might leave bruises and marks that can be seen, but can also include internal injuries that are hard to spot. Physical abuse can happen only once or many times. It may include hitting, choking, and kicking, biting, scratching, and pulling hair, throwing or hitting their child with things. A physically abused child or youth may have visible injuries or illnesses that are unexplained or poorly explained, including bruises, cuts, scrapes, welts, fractures, sprains, dislocations, or head injuries. Injuries that could not have happened by accident, like a bruised earlobe or a cut behind the knee. Visible handprints, fingerprints, or other marks, burns on various parts of their body, unusual behavior or appearance. In addition, the child or youth may be defensive about their injuries, wear clothing that covers their body even when the weather is warm, not be able to tolerate physical contact or touch, fear their parents or guardians or other adults, run away, be reluctant to undress around others, say their parent or guardian has injured them. Okay. Emotional abuse. This can happen along with neglect or the other types of abuse, may include humiliating the child by blaming or belittling them, refusing to comfort the child when the child is upset or frightened, criticizing the child by calling them names like stupid, bad, useless, or troublemaker, setting unrealistic expectations, threatening or accusing the child, exposing the child to violence or chronic drug or alcohol use in the home, cruel or unusual punishment or treatment or punishment. They may constantly apologize or try too hard to please others, show anxiety, fears, or depression, have trouble concentrating, learning, or sleeping, have episodes of aggressive, angry, and demanding behavior, cry for no apparent reason, or have problems with bedwetting or fecal incontinence. Okay, we're going to do a couple more adult things. We'll go over them quickly in case you end up working with seniors or other vulnerable adult sectors. Financial abuse is the most common form of elder abuse in Canada. Financial abuse can happen at any time, but will often start after a health crisis or after the death of a spouse, partner, or close friend. People who are alone, lonely, or in poor health are more vulnerable. They may find it harder to protect themselves from demands for money or other forms of financial abuse and from physical and emotional abuse, which may occur at the same time. Other examples of financial abuse are harder to put a name to. These can include pressuring, forcing, or tricking into, lending or giving away money, property, or possessions, selling or moving from your home, making or changing your will or power of attorney, signing legal or financial documents that you don't understand, working for little or no money, including caring for children or grandchildren, making a purchase you don't want or need, or providing food and shelter to others without being paid. And then intimate partner abuse. Intimate partner violence can take many forms, including physical abuse, a threat or attack made with a fist or object, pushing, shoving, slapping, kicking, striking, choking, hitting, and beating. This abuse may or may not leave physical marks or cause noticeable injuries. Sexual abuse, any forced sexual activity and other forms of sexual coercion, emotional or psychosocial abuse, words or actions to control or frighten an intimate partner or destroy their self-esteem through feelings of shame, anxiety, or hopelessness, financial abuse, control or misuse of an intimate partner's money, resources, or property, neglect, situations where a person has a responsibility to provide care or assistance to someone but actively does not do so. And here are some warning signs. A relationship may be abusive if one partner has unexplained bruises or questionable explanations for injuries, acts differently when their partner is around, for example, doesn't speak up, tries to change the subject if they are questioned about their partner's behavior, seems to be controlled by their partner and seems reluctant to make decisions by themselves, withdraws from their friends and family, is pressured to have their online activity monitored by their partner, has an uncharacteristic change in risk-taking behaviors, for example, doing drugs or drinking alcohol, experiences a drop in school or work performance, is humiliated or criticized by their partner in front of others, is frequently contacted by their partner wanting to know where they are and what they are doing. Relationship violence can have devastating impacts on victims and survivors. For example, they may face damage to their self-esteem and confidence, loss of sense of safety, financial instability, damage to their personal development and ability to actively participate in society, physical injury, depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress disorder, and sexually transmitted infections. Okay. The last one, and then we're done with this really heavy, hard section, clergy sexual assault. Because of the power differential between a pastor and his staff or congregants, sex cannot be considered consensual, making a sexual relationship or sexual advances illegal. So here are some warning signs. The pastor or other staff try to meet with you outside of the guidelines in this handbook. They encourage you to keep parts of the relationship secret. They use the Bible to justify abuse or sexual relations or give inappropriate gifts. Okay. So any questions on any of the abuse that we just talked about, abuse definitions? Okay, so now we're going to skip ahead because we already did all the how we prevent abuse. Okay, we're just going to talk about a few more guidelines. If you want to, Dustin, if you want to skip to where we're at meetings with leaders. So we have No separate guidelines for men and women. Guidelines apply to both opposite sex meetings and same-sex meetings in a ministry context. Guidelines do not apply when meeting outside of a ministry context. So these guidelines apply to all paid staff and volunteer leaders. Okay, so 2 adults can meet alone if in a public place, such as a coffee shop or park, and in an office with door closed but unobstructed view. So if there is a window in the door or something like that. Okay. Home visits must have at least 3 people age 15 or older present. You may hold hands during prayer if the other adult initiates. You may return another adult initiated hug. Following others on social media is acceptable. Email and text communication is acceptable. Church members have the right to make the communications public if they feel uncomfortable. And leaders have the right to share communications with a spouse or other leader if they feel uncomfortable with communication. The creation of a leadership team. So our church will have abuse prevention and response leadership team. Is composed of at least 1 man and 1 woman, and their roles will be made public to the entire church, including their contact information. The pastors and elders cannot be on this leadership team, so this team will be added to once the size of the church demands it. So this is overseeing volunteer files, being up to date in police reportings and procedures, answering questions, overseeing volunteers, being the first point of contact for junior or teen volunteers who suspect abuse, and being a safe contact for those who have experienced abuse. So right now, this is me, in case you're wondering. So if you have any questions, you can come and ask me. Okay. And then we keep a file on each person who volunteers with all these things listed in them. Okay. We have different guidelines for summer camps because we have a lot of volunteers coming in from outside and they are not indoors. And so because of those things, we have vetted adults at all times. The volunteers always go through a mini training that we do usually on the Sunday before, and all the washroom and diapering is done by parents or the vetted adults. Okay. So how do we respond to abuse? We want to ask, is it immoral or illegal or both? So you can see the little footnote that this idea of immoral or illegal is taken from Brad Hambrick. So when to confront within the church. So we often see this Matthew 18 passage used because we see here, if your brother sins against you, go to your brother, try to clear it up with your brother, and then if not, then you involve the church. So sometimes we see this actually as a form of used as a form of spiritual abuse against people, because we say, if someone abused you, you have to go to them personally and try and clear it up with them personally. And we just want to make clear that that is not what we advocate here. If there is illegal abuse, we don't believe that this passage applies in that situation. So we ask ourselves, is it immoral or is it illegal? Okay. So in this passage, we see the process of confronting a brother or sister for the purpose of restoration or church discipline. We use that process when we're seeing is immoral but not illegal. So we may see spiritual abuse, character flaws, sexual relations among equals. So this is the time when we might use Matthew 18. But when we are reporting, we use this when you see something that believe we should be known by the church leaders, but is not a reportable abuse to authorities, you may still approach the abuse leadership team. They will help you determine if it is illegal or immoral and who to approach next. So if you're not sure, is this a situation where I go and I talk to the other person, or is this a situation where we take it to authorities? We can help you decide that based on this handbook. So when do we bring problems to government authorities? We believe this is also biblical. In Romans 13, it tells us to let everyone submit to the governing authorities, since there is no authority except for from God, and the authorities that exist are instituted by God. And so we want all cases of illegal abuse mentioned in the first part of this handbook to know that the government is the proper authority to report to in these cases. So this would include all of the abuse, the clergy sexual assault, all of those things. Okay, the church is not to investigate its own crimes or decide whether or not the report is credible. We always report. Okay, so reporting illegal abuse, child abuse or maltreatment. This is a quote from the Canada.ca site. Child maltreatment reporting laws fall under the jurisdiction of provincial and territorial governments. Each province and territory has laws that mandate reporting professionals of suspected child maltreatment. Professionals must report cases in which there are reasonable and probable grounds to believe or reasonable grounds to suspect that a child is or may be suffering or may have suffered abuse. Abuse or neglect does not have to be proven for a report to be made. If the professional suspects that maltreatment has occurred, this is sufficient grounds to justify a report. The CPS is responsible for investigating reports and protecting the child. So in Alberta, everyone that works with children is a mandated reporter with extra responsibility on those professionals who work with children. Okay, so we want to know that if you suspect abuse, you are legally required to report it. Okay, if you report it in good faith, then the person who submits it is protected from any legal proceedings. So you don't have to worry about getting it wrong or being in trouble if you get it wrong. The more important thing is to report it than to investigate it yourself and be very sure before you report it. You always report. Okay. Reasonable suspicion just means that you truly suspect that a child is suffering from some of these signs. Okay. Or if a child discloses to you, that is also considered reasonable suspicion and you must report that. Okay. So here's what to do if you suspect child abuse. If the child is in immediate danger, you must call 911 right away. You should try to keep the child safe until the police arrive. You cannot hold back the child or hide the child or things like that, but you do call 911 and try to keep the child safe until they arrive. Having to call 911 is an unusual situation and should be saved for the most dire of circumstances. In most instances, you will contact the child abuse hotline, and here is the number. When you call them, they will gather as much information from you as possible about the child, the family, you, the situation, and the abuse. Don't worry if you don't have all the information. They will guide you through the process and you don't have to have all the answers. If you are an adult reporting suspected abuse, you do not need the permission of the staff or the abuse leadership team in order to report. You can report right away. If you would feel more comfortable with support or a second opinion, you can contact me and I will walk alongside of you in this process, as that is one of my responsibilities. If you are a teenager suspecting abuse, please contact the abuse leadership team and they will help you with the next steps. If you suspect adult abuse or exploitation, there is no mandatory reporting for adult abuse. And in the case of domestic violence or intimate partner abuse, reporting without permission can put the adult in even more danger. So any reporting must be done with the adult's permission unless they are incapacitated. It is very important to underline that domestic violence must not be reported without an exit strategy and permission from the one being abused. If you suspect abuse but don't know what to do, approach the abuse leadership team with your concerns and they can guide you in next steps. Okay, so responsibilities. To keep volunteer files, to be educated in abuse response, to answer volunteer questions, to support when volunteers report, to be a safe person to report abuse to, and to be a liaison between the church and the police or child services. The pastor's response and responsibilities. The pastor is neither an investigator or a gatekeeper. You do not need their permission to report, nor do they need to believe the abuse is credible. They should not ask you to take time while they investigate. The pastor should not be a member of the abuse leadership team and will defer to their leadership in these cases. Okay. If an accusation is made against a pastor or paid staff, once the abuse leadership team is made aware of an accusation, they will call a meeting with the accused and the whole leadership team. They will outline the accusation and ask that the pastor or staff member be put on a leave of absence while the police investigate and wait for either a clearance or a charge. While on the leave of absence, the pastor or staff member will have no access to vulnerable sectors. If charges have been laid, the pastor or staff member is to be put on unpaid leave or fired from their job to be determined by the leadership team. If possible, the abuse leadership team will have gotten input from the investigating authorities. If an accusation is made against a member volunteer, The volunteer will be removed from all volunteer positions in vulnerable sectors while authorities continue investigations. Policies for return after accusation. If the police communicate to the abuse leadership team that the accusations were false, the leader may be restored depending on a vote by the entire leadership team. If the police don't indicate that the accusations were false but cannot find enough evidence to charge, we will err on the side of protection of victims, and the pastor, staff member, or volunteer will not be restored to their position. Based on the severity of the accusation, the leadership team may ask the accused to leave the church for the safety of the vulnerable. If charges have been laid, the accused will be permanently removed from all responsibilities and may be asked by the leadership team to leave the church. So here's just a few last thoughts. In order for people to feel safe in our church, we want to have the robust policies and procedures outlined in this handbook. We also want to make mention of a few other steps. Victims are always welcome in our church. We will not accuse a victim of having some part in their abuse. There will be no consequences on the victim for reporting their abuse. They will not be ostracized or kicked out of the church. We will follow the laws for mandatory reporting. We will follow the policies and procedures outlined for our church. We will not allow known abusers to continue to attend our church, making our most vulnerable feel unsafe. We will not put the reputation of the church above the needs of the victims. Okay, that is the end of the handbook, other than the forms that are included here. Okay, so the first form is the training attendance form. I just need you to either print that out and give it to me on a Sunday, signed, and I will sign the abuse leadership team member. I will sign that saying that you did attend the training, or you can do it digitally and send it to me and I'll print it out and put it in your file here. Okay, if you don't have a printer at home. A reference form, so please include 3 references. Policies and procedures acknowledgement. It's just saying that you have read all the policies and procedures, which you have because you just listened to me go through them all. You agree to them all, and you understand that you cannot continue in your role if you do not follow them. And then a reporting acknowledgement. I've been made aware that according to Alberta law, I'm a mandatory reporter, and then all the things that that means for you. Okay, so you can print these out and give them to me on a Sunday, or you can do them digitally. If you have an iPad or something, you can just sign them and email it back to me. And then we also will need a police check for you before we can put you on the rotation for kids class.
And also for the kids check, we have the letter and the documentation and kind of the steps to do, so we'll send that to you to make it very easy. And we are also willing to cover the cost of the police check for you as well. So that's up to you. We can cover it, or it will go like as a reimbursement essentially. So while you do your police check, you pay for it then, and then we are happy to reimburse you the cost of it. I think the last time my record shows like $15. Is that still about right? Or it may be a little bit more now, but for this one, I think it was like 15 or something. But anyways, we don't want cost to be a prohibition. So
I was just looking, it's 25.
25. Inflation. Even the police have to make more money, I guess. So, but we have it in the budget to cover for all of you who may need to go through the background check too. Jen, can you address quickly for the background checks, if they have done it with another organization, like a school or something like that, can they use that background check, and what's the process for getting that to you?
Yeah, you can email me your PDF of your background check, as long as it is less than 2 years old. Yeah. So that is, background checks are technically good for 2 to 3 years, depending on different people's opinions. So yes, Vicki.
Are you guys registered with CPS? Because we can also just give consent for it to be shared, and they will send it directly to you guys.
I can't remember. A year ago, I went through that whole process, and I can't remember if we got registered or not.
No worries. No worries. It was the PDF. It's all good.
Well, we have to look into it now, because our church name did legally change last year from Northern Hills Church to Hope Hills Church, all that, and so that wasn't made into effect until the end of 2023. I think it was October, November or so when that was finally done through the province and CRA. So we should probably check and just make sure, because we should be okay now that the name change has gone through. But if you would have done it last year, it would not have gone through because of the name change stuff. So yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions for me? We covered a lot of material really quickly, but you guys all have that handbook, and I want you guys to keep that as a reference point if you're ever wondering. And also, I'm always available for questions. But any right now?
We also keep a copy of the handbook at the church, like on Sundays. There's always a copy of it, so I keep one in my bag. I think there used to be one in the kids' cabinet, Beth. I'm not sure if there's one there or not. I think I made some to put in there, but anyways, there's always one in my backpack, so I always have one there. So if you ever need a refresher or a question, there's always a printed resource too.
Okay, then my part is done. So
awesome. Thank you, Jim, for that. I know put a lot of work into putting all that together, and thank you for helping us make sure we have a very good, safe kids program. So not just kids program, but all around. So Beth, you want to finish us out?
Yeah, sure. I don't think there's any other information other than the fact that those of you that are new, yeah, we'll just be in touch in the next little bit once you get all this stuff in about yeah, what it looks like to jump in and start serving. But I'm excited to serve alongside you guys. Yeah, maybe I can just pray to close this out.
I do have something you said made me think of one thing. Our insurance does require that someone has been a part of our church for 6 months before they can start serving. So if you're, less than 6 months being a part of our church, we'll wait to the 6-month mark to actually get you into a kids class and that sort of thing. And so that's because we don't want someone to come in. We've met them one time and all of a sudden they're volunteering kids the next week. Because that's how you let predators in, and we want to keep everything safe. So that is an insurance requirement that we have. And so after 6 months, but I think most on this call have been with us for at least that time. Maybe a few have not been. So, but we will let you know that, and then we'll see the 6-month mark, and that's when we can start. The other thing for training for those of you who are new to being in the kids class, training for the role that you're doing, whether it's Bible storytelling or craft, it kind of happens on site. You kind of come the first time and watch it being done. And then it's very easy to pick up after that because everything is provided for you. So you get to see how it happens your first time. And then honestly, by the next time you're ready to go. It's very, very simple to do. Beth puts everything together, has everything ready for whichever role you're serving in the kids stations for that day. So, okay. Beth, close us out.
Okay. Father, we thank you for just being a kind and compassionate and caring and gentle and protective Heavenly Father. We thank you for the children that you've entrusted us with at church and in the families. And God, we just ask that you would just bless this aspect of our church, that this ministry would be one that is honoring to you. God, thank you so much for these volunteers. And I just pray that you would encourage them as they step into this role. And God, we just ask for your guidance, and because we need your wisdom and your guidance and leadership. And yeah, Father, we just thank you for this time and continue to ask that you would guide our church in Jesus' name. Amen.